I've been interviewing longevity athletes for a very long time at this point, and I've been trying to figure out what these superhumans are doing to try to reverse their biological age to be healthy and what are the common things. But there are very few commonalities that I can notice. But the strongest one that I can notice is that they like to test. They like to test themselves. They like to get every kind of biomarkers about their own bodies and make their intervention based on that. And even though their interventions are all over the place, some people don't care about sleep. Some people barely even exercise. Um, there are no commonalities in interventions, but there is a commonality in wanting to test. Something interesting is happening since the coronavirus phenomenon, which is the coronavirus events have created huge demand, a boom in the industry of home testing. And there is a revolution is happening here because now you don't have to go in, well, you still have to, but eventually as technology is progressing, you won't have to go into the laboratory, take a lot of blood drawn. A lot of people are afraid of needles, like that's the main thing why they are not getting their blood drawn. But home testing is booming because they can just not have to deal with the bureaucratic part of the healthcare system, and it's more convenient. That's why I'm creating this new series, which is about how the sausage is made in the home testing industry. And my first guest here is Hukam, who I believe to be from Pangea Labs, and I prepared from that because I was looking at his online profile, but then I just 2 minutes ago, I realized, we actually have corresponded through MyDNAage. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so I work with myDNAge. That's kind of the product that I manage here. But we work under a laboratory called Pangea Lab that has multiple companies working within it. It's all under our parent company's guidance, Simon Research. So here at Pangea Lab, not only do we do myDNAge, but we offer an array of lab and at-home tests that we're developing for the D2C markets.
Okay. So there is Pangea Labs, which is a larger company, and the subsidiary of it is myDNAage.
Yeah, we work as like a sister companies because Pangea Lab, because our parent company is Zymo Research, and then underneath we have myDNAge and Pangea Lab. But we work in the same building and use similar lab equipment for our offerings, such as some of our other ones are bladder care and precision bio. Both are at home application tests where like you said, the patient does not need to go into a laboratory to collect the sample. They collect their samples at home and then they send it into our lab, and we process and result here. But it's done in conjunction of multiple teams, so it's kind of creates an efficiency for laboratories to bring down costs and make these offerings possible for the consumer at home.
I didn't catch the name of the parent company.
Zymo Research.
Zymo.
Yes.
All right. So Pangea Labs and myDNAage are two sister companies, and there is a parent company. Yes. No other companies around here.
We have a few different sister companies. So basically, Zymo Research, they've been around for about 30 years, and they've done a lot of research with some of the top organizations here in the U.S. And some of the biggest universities as well. And so throughout our time, we've developed some of these tests, such as myDNAge, where we bought the license from Dr. Steve Horvath, who kind of was a pioneer within this industry about a decade back. And then with that license, we took it and created the myDNAge offering, which is the biological age test. And we were the first to market back in late 2010s, 2017, 2018. And since then, the industry has just kind of exploded, with biological age test offerings. But on top of that, our parent company has developed the tests such as Bladder Care, which is a bladder cancer sensitivity test. And then some of our other offerings like Precision Biomes that looks at, your gut health and whatnot. And then we have a few other companies that that offer different tests as well. But it's all under the guidance of Zymo Research that has helped develop these tests along the way.
I want to know some founder stories here, but I'm not sure which company should I ask about. Do you know the origins of any of the companies regarding how did it even to the person who just figured out I'm going to create a company here,
Yes. I'm not entirely sure. So our CEO of our parent company, Dr. Jha, he obviously has his PhD and started the company back in 1994. So it's been around for 31 years now. For a while, it was a bit of a smaller research lab. But over the first few decades of its existence, it just kind of slowly grew. And then obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to take advantage of that. I think in Southern California, we were one of the first labs that were able to offer the COVID-19 tests here. So there's just been a lot of growth within the last decade for Zymo for things such as the MyDNAage test, COVID-19, and its other offerings that we've, launched since then. As far as the MyDNAage test, from what I'm aware of, we work closely with researchers at, UCLA and some of these other medical universities in the area. And they were connected. And then I believe our CEO, Dr. Jha, had, connected with Dr. Steve Horvath, and then the conversations kind of led from there, which eventually led to us getting that exclusive license for Dr. Steve Horvath's aging clock, the 353 CPG sites that he had researched that related to biological age. And then from there, it happened very quickly. From my understanding is we got the license and then we were able to launch a test pretty fast after that and become one of the first tests to the market for biological age testing.
All right. One of the most prominent longevity athlete, and actually he's leading the longevity World Cup leaderboard, Michael Garden, has just yesterday I had a conversation with him about that. Hey, I think we cannot get Horvath age anywhere anymore because he was getting it from True Diagnostic back in the days. But then True Diagnostic stopped providing Horvath age, and then True Diagnostic was still providing Horvath age for him, but only for him as okay, we do it for you, but then they stopped it us, so now he cannot measure it, but it's very good that you guys are doing it, and we have to tell him. I would like to walk through a user journey here, and I think that's the best thing here, the Horvath clock. So what is it called? Let me see. The myDNAage report, right? As a user, I go onto your myDNAage.com website and blood biological age test. So that's the Horvath, right?
Yeah, so the blood and the urine both use the Horvath clock.
Urine as well.
Yeah. Just to kind of give you a basic understanding, our blood kit is our main offering. That's what a lot of our consumers test with, because our blood and urine, although they both use the Horvath clock, they kind of show different results within once you test with us. So our blood tests, because the sample that we get is blood and it's able to travel throughout your body, it'll give you a very good understanding of your biological age of your entire body, whereas the urinary tract shows the biological age health of your urinary tract, where the urine travels through. It's good, both have their own uniqueness, and we have patients or customers that use the test for different applications. So if a consumer of ours, has known to have bladder stones or issues within their urinary tract, they'll take our urine tests. It's just to kind of test along that line. And then for people that have more general um, issues or want to know a little bit more about their entire body, we'll just use their blood test.
And what about saliva? I see you do not do that, but yeah, why not?
Yeah, so with saliva, we've done studies, along all types of, both blood, urine, saliva, skin, testing for biological age as well. And we came to the conclusion when we, first created this test that blood and urine are the most consistent with biological age. So regardless of the time of day you're collecting or after eating meals or whatever it is, you can collect a blood sample and you can collect a urine sample, and that biological age will be the same no matter the time of day or the time of the week. Whereas saliva, it could be a little bit more inconsistent within your results. You can collect a saliva sample in the morning, right when you wake up, and then collect it in the evening after you've eaten, and you'll get two different results, that aren't necessarily even close to each other. So, it just over the years has provided a little bit more inconsistency, which we here at MyDNAage want to make sure that we are giving very accurate results, basically because our consumers will come back and, we don't want to scare them and be like, oh yeah, your age is 7 years older, but that's only because they're collecting a saliva test. So we've stuck with the blood and urine, and we're confident in our abilities to make accurate results on those samples.
Why would I choose blood or over urine or urine over blood? Is it just, am I afraid to prick my finger or not?
Yeah, so we at MyDNAge typically will suggest our blood test for our consumers, just because it gives a very general understanding, and our results, we're able to add indexes into the results. So for our blood tests, we offer things like our epimetabolic and genetic SNP indexes, which, we can do that from analyzing the blood, which we aren't able to do on the urine test. So with our blood test, you're able to get a little bit more data from that offering. But for urine, if you're looking for a more specialty service that, is focused on looking at your urinary health, you've had, bladder stones or any sort of urinary tract issues, then we would suggest it in that case. Otherwise, usually the blood test is more helpful for our consumers.
Then I buy, let's say, the blood test, right? And then what happens? So it's a one-time cost, or do I have to subscribe to something, or what's going on here?
Yes, so you don't need to subscribe. Our list price on our website is $299 US. What that basically comes with is we'll send you an at-home blood test kit.
Do you ship globally?
We ship in US, Canada, Europe, and Australia. And then for areas outside of that, usually we work with like clinics or other companies to offer our tests in certain parts of Asia, but it's on very case-by-case basis.
All right. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, we should attest to you, the consumer, and then you'll have all the instructions that you need to collect the samples. So you'll have, it's like similar to a diabetes test where you prick your finger, and then you collect a few drops of blood, put it into the blood collection tube, which comes with a liquid reagent that's able to preserve your sample at room temperature for over a year. Close that sample up, put it in the return label that we include in our kit as well. So you don't even need to pay for return shipping. It's included in the price of the test. Put it back in the label and then close it up, give it to the corresponding shipping courier, depending on which country you're in. And then it just comes back to our lab. We have agreements with shipping couriers, so there's never any issues usually with shipping the sample back to us. I know, sometimes shipping biological samples can be a little bit tricky, depending on where you're at, but we have existing, partnerships with shipping couriers so that we're able to get these samples with no issues. And then once the sample comes,
What's the trick?
Well, so especially for like international,
What kind of problems appear?
so especially like internationally, right? So like with countries like Canada or even in Europe, if you're sending biological like blood samples, a lot of these countries are scared to ship these samples, across borders because you don't know what diseases or whatnot can be in these samples. And then, you risk like with these companies, they don't want to risk having it like these sample tubes cracking in shipment and then spilling onto the package. So there's those risks that a lot of countries, in their customs are very aware of. So that's where we come in as a company to specialize in. That's why we provide the return shipping labels, so that we can avoid those issues with a lot of these like customs within certain countries within Europe and internationally. But we have our process very, very hammered down, and we've been doing it for 7 to 8 years now. So I think I'm sure the customs, in a lot of these countries are aware of who we are and what we do, and we're able to, kind of move our samples along with very little issues. Yeah, I mean, we've seen from time to time, even with our shipments and stuff, you still get the customs notices of, oh, what are you doing and whatnot, but we're able to resolve any of those issues pretty quickly with our resources.
Since we're talking about issues, what about user mistakes? Like, what kind of mistakes do you use? I mean, the only funny ones.
Yeah, we've gotten all types. People, it's funny because a lot of times we have like our the biological age testing market tends to be 30, 40 plus, and then even as people get even into the older like 50s, 60s, 70s, we'll test a lot, and you deal with the people that aren't as technologically savvy. For myself, still a little bit younger, I grew up with technology, so it's never been like an issue for me. But it's funny because we have like our activation portal and things like that people need to use technology for. And so we get calls all the time where, from time to time of people just like, how do I make an account? Or we have like things like our sample reports on our website where people think that that's their report itself. So they like will go on and they see download sample report for a human test, and they'll call us and they're like, I'm 70 years old and this test is saying I'm 26. And immediately I just have to, we have to say like, oh, your test is in this part. And then I think the weirdest call that I got was from someone thinking that they needed to drink the liquid reagent that was in the blood collection tube. It was just off because I wasn't aware of what they were talking about. And then they were like, oh,
what is it for?
Yeah, it's to preserve your blood sample. So once you collect the blood, there's like a tube where you put the blood into. In that tube, there's like a liquid that's able to preserve the DNA.
Hey, so it's not a blood spot card. It's a tube.
Yeah, it's a tube that you put blood into and you mix it with the liquid.
I didn't meet such a thing yet.
Yeah, and so there was one person. This was when I had first started as well with the company. I've been here for over 4 years now, but when I had first started, we've gotten the call of someone that like thought that they may had needed to drink one of the liquids for.
Is it dangerous?
No, I think they would have been fine. I've never heard of someone trying to drink liquids before like that. I mean, it's obviously not suggested, right? We don't want anyone drinking any of our instructions are pretty clear. You don't do any of that. Yeah, it's something, especially early on. I was after that kind of ready for anything to come my way, so we can kind of get rid of it or kind of quickly tell them, oh no, that's the wrong thing to do. Yeah, a lot of interesting kind of tidbits over the years, things like that.
All right. The blood sample arrives to your. Where does it arrive? It arrives to the US, to California.
Yeah, so we process. So our lab is in Southern California, and we process all of our samples here in house. So whether or not you're collecting the sample in the US, Canada, Europe or Australia, wherever we send our tests to, they all come back to our lab here in California, in actually the lab that I'm in right now. And then we take those samples. If it's a blood sample or urine, we have a lab in this building, and our team will extract the DNA from the sample for blood and urine. We analyze it, make sure there's enough DNA in both the blood and the urine samples, and then we take that DNA and then we throw it onto what's called a next-gen sequencer. So that's basically where we take the DNA and we read it at every single CPG site on the DNA, and we take the CPG sites that we are looking at and analyze it. So our next-gen sequencing, we read each DNA or the DNA strand about 1,000 times over, so that we can get a very accurate read on it. And then we analyze it, come up with the biological age, and get your genetic SNPs and the epimetabolic index as well, so that you're able to get these very accurate results.
How long does it take? Like really, how long does it physically take to get the results in terms of hours, I guess, maybe days, but also how long does it take for the person to actually get the results?
Yeah, so the processing time that we advertise for our customers is about 4 to 6 weeks. And the actual processing time it's pretty tight. I think it's about 3 weeks. If I'm just counting in my head roughly, between like 2 and 3 weeks. But we have things along our process that, we need to push into groupings and whatnot. So like, it's not just one sample that's going on the sequencer at a time. It's a group of samples that need to go on to it. And then there's things like our personnel, like we say in the lab here, like we're kind of we're doing things across teams as well. So it's not just, MyDNAage that's in this lab. It's a few other, tests that are testing as well that go across multiple teams. So along with that, it takes just a little bit longer, but it's pretty close. I would say, because people think that, the actual processing time may only be 1 week, but realistically, like when you think about how much time like a sequencer actually takes up, the sequencing itself takes about 2 days to get the samples ready for the sequencer. It takes about another 2 days. So it's about a 1 week process just to get one of our biggest kind of bottlenecks through. But aside from that, it's pretty on point. We're processing samples every day and getting it as fast as possible out to our customers. And we're always trying to work on getting it even faster too. I think in the industry as well, like that's one of the biggest things that you kind of deal with within biological age testing, especially the companies that use next-gen sequencing and DNA methylation, because it's such a time-consuming process. I think when you look at other tests within biological or within medical testing, you're able to get results within 24 to 48 hours. But this one's just a little bit more time-intensive, but the accuracy at least is guaranteed when you do something like that.
For now, I hope it's gonna improve in the future, right? It's like better machines are created and they're more powerful. How many people are doing the work on the samples there?
That's a good question. I'm just trying to think. On our team, probably 7 to 12. If I had to think about how many times it changes hand and who it goes to, I think it's about 7 to 12 from when you buy the sample to when like you get the results. So, this includes like our shipping team, our my end too as well. And the rest of our team on the back end that does the sample processing. It's about 7 to 12 people, if I had to imagine, exactly.
And what do you do?
So here at myDNAage, I do marketing and business development, kind of things like taking on media inquiries or customer kind of inquiries, clinic inquiries. A big part of my job is handling the clinic needs of our company, because we have our direct to consumer leg, which is, which is just customers buying directly off our website. And then we also have a clinic partnership program that we run as well, where, clinics all around the world. They use our tests within their clinics with their patients, and then they run kind of health coaching. So our test is the metric that they use to test their patient's biological age, and then we assist them through kind of any questions that they have. And that's a lot of where I come in. I come in as a product manager, basically, and make sure that they're able to answer all the questions that they have for their patients.
Okay. And altogether at MyDNAage, what's the number of people who are working there?
I would say I would include Pangea in it because there is a little bit more cross functionality. Yeah, so probably between like 50 and 60 people, included through both, that I would think have any sort of kind of handling of MyDNAage, and including our mid-level manager staff and the C-suite as well. Yeah.
Okay, well, just for some context for the listeners, I had a company that reached around 40 to 50 people, right? You guys have 50, 60 people, and True Diagnostic have around 100 something people. So that's about the sizes of the companies. So you're okay. Before that, how's the shares are in the company? So it's a private company or a public one? You have market capitalization. Did you raise money, or it's like privately founded, never sold, founder owned?
Yeah, so myDNAge is privately owned by our parent company, Zymo Research. So as far as I'm aware, that's probably something I should know. Is Zymo Research is publicly traded or not? I don't believe it is. I believe it's still privately owned by our CEO, Dr. Jha. Yeah, so we're privately owned. As far as like market share, capitalization, or the market caps and whatnot, I believe it's pretty evenly distributed between all the companies within this space. So True Diagnostic, Elysium, and some of these other companies that work within the space that we do, is all pretty similar. Within the space, there isn't like a dominant testing company that owns all the market share, because the space is still within still pretty new arena for testing, for medical testing, biological age tests. Since we were like the first market about 7 to 8 years ago, it's still relatively new. We're still in the process of educating consumers of, how to test, what to test, why to test. And so, the growth for this space is still relatively large, right? So we'll see within the next decade, or two, which companies really are the ones that are, moving the space forward, taking over the market capital, and if, at-home testing as a whole can grow to a point where that's what people would rather do than going into doctor's office and having to deal with insurance and whatnot. So, there's a lot of space for growth within this industry. As far as, market caps, it's pretty evenly distributed as of right now from what we are kind of seeing on our end.
You almost answered my follow-up question, but not quite. So I'm going to ask you. Now, there you are at Pangea or MyDNAage Capital, and can you draw me a picture of the home testing industry from your point of view, right? So from your point of view, like what do you see?
Yeah, so I'll say from the kind of like where we're at in the US, right? Because I know like internationally with Europe and other countries, they have different kind of industries as far as medical testing and how they work with like insurance coverages, and some countries have, universal health care. But from the US, as right now, what you need to do a medical test that's diagnostic, right? MyDNAge isn't a diagnostic test, but there's things that are in our lab, like the bladder kit tests, that you need a physician's requisition to do a test such as that. So that's where there's a few kind of barriers that within the at-home medical testing right now that we're kind kind of trying to address and um, get over within the next, 5 to 10 years. Hopefully there are changes within insurance and whatnot. So as far as like where the industry is at right now, um, I think there is a heavy interest from consumers to not have to go into doctor's offices. And you hear this all the time, having to go to your general physician and then having to get referred to a specialist and then getting the test. And sometimes you get referred to the wrong specialist, your insurance doesn't cover. So there's all these types of barriers to getting a medical test done. So people just don't want to have to do that. So from our end, getting some of this stuff across the line to remove these barriers so that people can just take the tests that they need at home, make the costs cheap, and then also work with, maybe some companies like telehealth and doctors that are in office right now to provide these results pretty fast and efficiently so that in the future you can get medical testing done same day within 2 or 3 days, get your results the same week, and have these issues addressed very fast, and also be able to, provide interventions in a efficient manner, because right now our system isn't as efficient. So hopefully in the next decade or 2 decades, this industry can get to a point where we're making healthcare as a whole just more efficient as well.
I can imagine how the traditional healthcare industry is looking at you guys, that these guys have to be regulated because they don't have such standards as we do. But, that's the funny thing, because this is the thing that creates the vicious cycle for them, the over-regulation of themselves, the asking for the regulators that creates, as you just said, created the demand for you. Because they create so much bureaucracy, no one wants to deal with them anymore. And even though you guys are not providing such accurate results as they do, at least you provide a better customer service overall speaking.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you think about, like working at a company like this. We're kind of considered disruptors within the industry. And for traditional, healthcare companies that are already within your usual kind of insurance models and whatnot, they look at our companies like we're some type of enemy. Although we are just trying to provide a solution to consumers that's better than what we have now. That's when you get into kind of the industry that wants things to stay exactly how they are, because some of these more well-established companies they want, to keep their profits. They want to keep everything the same because they know those rules. They don't want the rules to change, right? So then it's just a, constant battle, because a lot of times, these companies that are disruptors are just trying to provide a solution to basics, although you have the other end of it where people are used to what they're used to and they don't want things to change.
Well, we have to move forward. Can't wait for everyone. The train is leaving. Who do you consider to be your biggest competitor?
That's a good question. It's funny because we're aware of our competitors, right? So like True Diagnostic, Elysium, are two of the ones that we kind of look at as well, because I think our 3 companies are all using the same type of test. We look at, tests that use DNA methylation. There are some other biological age tests that you do biological age testing, but they don't use DNA methylation. So it's a different type of science and something that we don't necessarily compare ourselves against. For the most part, though, Elysium and True Diagnostic, we're very aware of, but we kind of stay in our own lane as well, because within the biological age test industry, a lot of our tests, although we're considered biological age, our sciences differ. So like where I said the Dr. Steve Horvath test, right? We have the exclusive license to his 353 CPG sites. And to back up, right? So a strand of DNA has thousands of CPG sites. Dr. Steve Horvath, when in his study, identified that there is 353 CPG sites that are related to aging. So depending on what's called epigenetics. So you have your genetic sets, your genetic code, how you look. kind of some of your things that are stagnant. There's something called epigenetics that you can see noticeable changes on your CPP sites that are changed due to your diet, your exercise, your sleep, stress, and environment, right? So depending on those 5 pillars, it'll change the CPG sites, and that's what we look at to generate biological age. So with Dr. Steve Horvath's 353 sites, we hold that exclusive license, and on top of that, we've added our own CPG sites that we look at as well. So we've kind of developed this very accurate test for companies like True Diagnostic and Elysium. They do biological age testing with DNA methylations, but they look at different CPG sites have different applications with their processing. So things like doing their sequencer, we run our sequencer along the DNA about 1,000 times, whereas like I'm not entirely sure how they do theirs, but I know it's not like 1,000. They look at maybe like 100,000 CPG sites like 10 times or 100 times, right? So it's the comparison that I make is if you are looking into like a telescope, our telescope is a lot more magnified on a smaller area, which will give you very like, accurate reading of each little dot in that area. Whereas like if you're using another test, it may look at a bigger area, but just not as accurately. So not to say that their tests aren't great as well, but it's a little bit different within each test. So what you're looking for each test can be completely different. And so although there are competitors within the space, it's kind of hard to compare at times as well.
What do you think is overrated in the home testing industry?
Overrated? Like, are you talking about like overall like home tests in general, or just that has to do with biological age?
Or which one do you have a better answer to?
That's a good question. I don't know if I've ever thought about like things being like overrated within the home test industry. It's still very young in its, it's still in its infancy, like the home testing industry, even though there have been like home tests such as your diabetes test, right? Maybe the fact that like it's still a little bit like wonky as far as like you take this test at home, but you still have to, process everything like it's a laboratory test, right? So the only like difference is that you're doing it at home, although it's a great application, maybe eventually we'll be able to have, like you do the test at home and everything's able to be processed, either at home or like somewhere very locally as well. I don't know if I think there is anything overrated about the at home test industry now that you say it, but yeah, that's, I guess, my 2 cents on it.
There is no reason why your toilet shouldn't analyze the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about underrated? What do you think?
I mean, certainly underrated is the fact that you can't, like, dealing with the insurance industry or the U.S. medical industry now, right? Like, I'm, certainly throughout, like, my adulthood, have to go to the doctor's office and I've dealt with having to be bounced around from physician to specialist, and getting the right person. The underrated value of at-home testing is the fact that, like, you can get the tests a lot quicker. And people don't understand like the value of just being able to sit at home, get a medical test. If you haven't had to deal with it before, you don't realize the value of just being able to, kind of get the test yourself and then not have to deal with, all the doctors and the doctor's offices that you have to schedule, the time that you have to take off of work to go to, an appointment as well.
So what about the number of, we totally forget this, but this is very important. When the test has been evaluated and everything is done, then I get the results. So what am I getting? What things am I getting there?
Yeah, so for MyDNAge's biological age test, right? You're going to get obviously your biological age. So when you look at your report, it'll start with your biological age and show you kind of like, say, for example, if you're 30 and then your biological age comes back 33.
This is the Horvath, right?
That's the Horvath. Yeah, that's the Horvath clock. And so that's kind of the main data point that everyone wants to know is, what's the overall health score of your entire lifestyle. And then from there, our test shows what's called the epimetabolic index. So that basically measures the risk for like things like metabolic diseases like diabetes. And how we do that is we have a scale of 0 to 6.3. And if your score is between 0 and 6.3, that shows generally a normal metabolic risk factor. But if it goes above that 6.3, what it's indicating is that you may or may not have like a or metabolic, disease. But even if you don't, your metabolic score shows that of someone that's similar, that has a metabolic disease such as diabetes. So some people take that, they look at it and they see like, oh, my, score on the metabolic score was 8.49. And they look at their diet and they may not have like, the best diet. They may be getting like Chick-fil-A or some random food all the time. And so then they're able to see that. And then they're like, okay, let me make some changes to my diet and come back and test within 6 to 8 months. And they come back a few months later and now their score is below that number. So, they're able to make changes not only to their biological age score, but to their metabolic score, so that they're able to kind of like manage their health a little bit better. And then on top of that, we provide things like the genetic SNPs, which is our basically like just their stagnant scores. So once you do the test the first time, it's going to be the same across, but our MTHFR index and APOE index, APOE shows kind of your age-related disease risk. So things like Alzheimer's and other age-related diseases that pop up like that are a little bit more hereditary. You can see your risk factor for things like that, so that if you're younger, say in your 30s and 40s, even 50s, right, for things like Alzheimer's, you can see that. And if you have a higher risk for if you have a high risk factor, you can do things for Alzheimer's like, more mental exercises and things to keep your brain a little bit more activated, so that as you get older, if you are going to get Alzheimer's or whatnot, it's not saying that you can completely prevent it, but if you are going to get it, maybe you can delay the onset of it. So instead of getting it at 70 years old, you can get it at like 75, right? So that's the goal. Indexes like fat. And then on top of that, we also have like our comparison indexes like that compare you against our general population, like specific population and age population. And those scores are valuable because then you're able to kind of stack yourself up against people that are the same sex as you or the same age as you. So you can kind of see, oh, people within my age group are actually a lot healthier, or they're not as healthy as me. And then you're able to, generalize. Because sometimes people get like a bad score, but then if you see people within the age group are actually, within that range, you don't feel as bad. You're not like, oh, I need to make these drastic changes. You can rather say, oh, I can make subtle changes and then try to improve my score that way.
In terms of just in a single number, how many data points are you telling to the user?
Data points. So if I counted that one out, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I believe, 7 or 8. Yeah. Which, when our test first started, back, when it was just a biological age score, and then like I think the comparison indexes, and then in 2021, we went through a report redesign. So we went from offering, I believe, 2 or 3 data points to then 7 or 8, and then obviously we're continuing to develop. So at some point in the future, we hope to go from 7 or 8 to 10 to 15, right? So it's not a test that we are finalized with. It's obviously as we kind of continue to grow, the data will just continue and move forward, so we're able to offer more to our consumers at the same price point.
Okay, so it's $299, right? Mm-hmm. The blood test. How did you came to this pricing decision?
So this was actually, this was done before I was at the company, but if you look at kind of the at-home test market. Obviously a lot of these at-home tests are a few $100s. So when you measure that up against, what our costs were for the tests, and we were able to get our costs relatively low because we work within this model of our lab where multiple teams are working on different tests and stuff. So other tests probably charge $400, $500, $600 for something similar to what we do, but we were able to get our price point down to $299.
Mm-hmm. So you were looking at other people, other sellers on the market, and then you looked at your costs and see that, oh, there is a comfortable gap there.
Yeah,
for it.
Exactly. Typically, from my experience in marketing too, that's how, pricing works is you look at what everyone else is doing and if you can kind of manage, within that market, then you go with the price that you feel is right. And it's worked with us. We're still, I believe we're still like the lowest priced biological age test on the market. I don't have the updated numbers, so I could be wrong, but we're within that range on the low end.
I know True Diagnostic had maybe it was $299 as well, but they stopped selling that package. So now they are only selling True Age and True Health. So, and they are over $500. Yeah. Although they started doing this subscription thingy, which brings down the price. But anyway, so it gets complicated, seems very more expensive. Okay. Anyway, how many tests did you guys sold about? Exactly.
I don't know if I have the updated numbers because usually I look at it on.
We are talking about like tens of thousands.
Yeah, tens of thousands definitely. We've been doing the test for 7-8 years now, so like.
Okay, how many tests do you process in a day?
In a day,
know that there.
So I can, if I like, it depends on time of year is certainly a factor as well, because a lot of people at the end. So like, with people in their new year, new me kind of programs. Whoa. Yeah. Like at the beginning of the year, they want to improve the diet, improve their health overall. So we see a huge influx of tests, come in in like December and January, and to the point where, we actually used to do a new year, new me competition, with our consumers where, they would buy 2 tests from us in November, December, and even January. They would test at the beginning of the year, and then they would test in the summer, like June to August period. And then we would actually hand out prizes to the people that were able to lower their biological age the most throughout that period.
Okay, this is interesting for me because, as you might know or not know, I'm running this year I launched the Longevity World Cup, and I've been trying to think about, because every season I change what biological age test is used, and one season takes a year.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to thinking like, okay, so when should the season start and end, right? Because this kind of consumer behaviors are are the things that must be adjusted to.
I don't know if I'm giving up trade secrets or whatnot saying that, but certainly, from my experience, I've seen a little bit more activity at the end of the year, beginning January time, because people are into kind of the health consciousness period around that time.
Yeah, is it trade secret or not? I came to the same conclusion with shaping,
it's a pretty open, secret.
Everyone wants a new year, new life,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, by the way, what do you think about longevity as a sport?
Longevity as a sport?
Is it a new thing to you? Have you ever heard about the Rejuvenation Olympics?
Yes. I think it's really interesting. I think competition always breeds motivation for people. So treating longevity as a sport will make people more motivated to be serious about it. Especially if you're doing it personally, right? Because for a lot of people, their personal goals get killed due to lack of motivation. So adding in something like this as a competition will push people to actually stay competitive with their goals. And me as a person myself, I'm very like competitive. I play sports regularly as well. And it definitely helps and to kind of keep yourself mentally active within a sport if you're treating something like longevity like that. Um, as an overall like kind of comparison, I think longevity for every person is very unique. So there isn't like one set of rules that like works for everyone, right? So the goalpost can be like, I think everyone just has to be open to moving the goalpost a little bit, when it comes to each person. But overall as a sport, it could be it's a very interesting idea because, you're going to see people improve. Even for like our New Year, New Me program that we used to do, we saw like a lot of success with it. Like most of the people in the program actually did, have younger biological age. So as an overall idea, I think it's beneficial for everyone. And it'll, keep their motivations very high to staying accountable to those goals.
How would you call the people who are doing longevity as a sport? So, for example, footballers are called footballers.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, like, we see, like, we know that, like, within the space, like, biohackers are very, like, popular as a popular term within the space. So I would say, like, if people that are in the longevity space, they're treating it as a sport, they're technically, I think, they're considered biohackers in this space, in this spot, right?
Okay. Well, I asked this because I just came up with the term time lifters, but I can't really figure out if it's cringe or genius. So
maybe time travelers,
time travelers.
Yeah, time travelers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We are getting there.
Yeah.
Okay. If you would have 10x money, 10x budget overnight at MyDNAge, what would you build?
What would I build? See, I probably working like working as a pseudo product manager within the space. I definitely would just use all those resources to make, like our entire process like a lot more efficient. Like seeing, for me personally, I want to see the consumer like, be able to test as fast as possible. So I would do things like, use that budget to do overnight shipping to and from our consumers. Once we get it in lab, it's like just the samples themselves are in independently. And I don't know, just make use the budget to just completely, overall everything so that we can get people's results, right away and see if we can do like, 2 to 3 day processing, right? It would be kind of exciting to see. And then, just probably do like a little bit more as far as, like using more for the marketing budget, right? Like go out and do some things like what Red Bull does, right? Like use a budget to create like different competitions that aren't necessarily like directly with MyDNAge, but they're MyDNAge associated. So like, how Red Bull does like skydiving and extreme sports and whatnot. And they even have, soccer teams in Europe as well. It'd be cool to just kind of like do something like that with marketing if we had the budget, here as well.
Oh, nice. I have an idea on the Longevity World Cup that companies could be able to sponsor athletes there. But I'm not sure I'm going to get there to implement it in a year or two, but it's there. The idea is there. By the way, for those of you freaks who think making things faster here is not that what's interesting or revolutionary, then just think about McDonald's, right? The very thing that McDonald's did better than every other restaurant in the world is that it was faster.
Exactly.
It had a fast food.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
entire industry now is just based on what they were able to do. And now it's just copycat how they were able to do it.
yeah. But don't go to McDonald's because you're going to get
Yeah.
a bad Horvat croak, guys.
Yeah. It was funny is who's the movie, there was that documentary Super Size Me. That just gave me an idea. I was like, for people that do those documentaries, if we were able to test before and after, because I'm sure you would see even within 30 days the biological differences between someone not only with their weight but like with their biological age. It'd be spiked like crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I think there are a couple of people starting to do those experiments. In
Yeah.
fact, I just had someone, Marius, from the he's creating the Fountain of Youth YouTube channel, who was doing the Dunedin pace experiment, and it didn't came out the way that he was hoping to hoping it to happen. But he was doing this experiment, right, and made a video about it at least. Do you know the contrarian question from Peter Thiel? Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I've heard of, Peter Thiel. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what's one thing that you strongly believe to be the case, but very few people agree with you on?
Well, this maybe not like very few people believe, but it's kind of like, even within the biological age space, right? Like I said, it's still very new, so people are still early adopters to the space. But I think the science is some of the best science that we have within the medical testing industry. It's still kind of getting brought along, but people kind of still doubt what if biological age is actually something that like works or whatnot. But I believe that, within this space, biological age could be the future of how we generate our health. Like, I think my hope is that 20, 30 years from now, right? As soon as you turn 18, you start taking biological age as your yearly kind of panel testing. Instead of going to the doctor, you just take biological age and you do it on a yearly basis. So you're able to track yourself over 40 to 50 years. And, depending on what our medical industry and insurance industry is like, then hopefully it can just be used as like, your yearly testing. And then over time, you're able to catch some of the medical issues a lot quicker and whatnot. So I think eventually it'll become something of that nature.
This has never happened before. You just answered my follow-up question, which is usually the last question, which is that you should articulate your value proposition.
I see.
And you just did. So guys, go to MyDNAge, myDNAge.com, and get the Horvat test, which is apparently on the market. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.